Hey, welcome back, great thinkers. I'm excited to have you here for another episode of the Think Great Experience. And today you are in for a real treat. We are joined by Blanca Cobb. Blanca is a body language expert who also has a master's degree in psychology. She is a phenomenal speaker and a super dynamic media personality who's appeared on shows like Good Morning America, The Steve Harvey Show, Entertainment Tonight. She has also been quoted in hundreds of articles and publications all over the world, including what I feel, Blanca, may be the most important one, which is my new book, The Communication Movement. And I did use some of your quotes in there. And thank you for that, by the way. And welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. It is a delight to be here.
We are so excited about this. And, body language expert. I mean, that just sounds so awesome, but most people might not know what exactly that means, or at least what you do on a day-to-day basis. Can you share a little bit of your insights of what it's like to be a body language expert?
Sure. Well, being a body language expert is I really look at the nuances and the subtleties of nonverbal communication and how it impacts people, how it impacts you and your day-to-day interactions and communications with others. Everyone always is trying to figure out if the other person likes them, if they're interested, if they can trust them. And that is part of the equation. But one thing that a lot of people don't think about is their role in that communication and their role in that interaction. And again, it's the subtleties that you need me for to point out the things that you can't see.
I mean, talk about the importance of body language right now when we are virtual. I would assume that through the pandemic, it's become even more important to be able to pick up on those nuances. Have you experienced that too?
Well, what's happening right now is that there are obstacles into reading body language. So there are obstacles into how we normally interact with people because we are more on virtual, as you said, right? We're more on Zooms or FaceTime. And so you can see like the upper body only, upper body to the top of the head, and some hand movements if someone is showing their hands on the camera. And so you focus on what you can see. And so it's a different way of interacting, and it's a different way of analyzing and reading body language. And then even when we're in public, we're 6 feet apart, plus we're wearing masks. And that has really changed the way that we communicate and even say hello, actually.
That's right. The whole social distancing is throwing a whole wrench in our lives. I can only imagine business leaders too really need to hear what you're saying about the nonverbal communication, because they're about to welcome people back into the workplace and the whole dynamic has shifted. I mean, it's crazy. Now, you've said that your training in body language started when you were a little girl. Can you tell us how you got to this point where, where you came from and where you are now? This is a pretty amazing story.
Yes. When I was a little girl, I was abused, and I spent a lot of my childhood scared. And as you might imagine, I didn't know who I could trust. But one way to protect myself is that I started watching people's movements and reactions. And what I realized rather quickly is that people unknowingly reveal who they really are and what their intentions are. And I had no idea what I was doing as a little girl. It wasn't until I was an adult reflecting back on my life that I realized how much importance I put into body language in order to protect myself. And unfortunately, I couldn't do that a lot. But also, little did I know is that trauma that I went through as a child, that it would ever lead into a successful career as an internationally recognized body language expert.
Yeah. So at that point, so you used it to protect yourself. Mm-hmm. And when did you make the decision? I know you have degrees in psychology. At what point did you say, I'm going to be a body language expert? How did that come about? When did you realize that this was your calling?
It was never part of my plan. I did get a master's in psychology because I wanted to help, but it wasn't until I saw a body language expert on MSN, which is my homepage. She was promoting a book and she had an interview with Al Roker on the Today Show.
Oh.
And then I was like, wait a second. Everyday people like me can use body language and understand it. I always thought it was like for the CIA and the FBI, but not like everyday people.
Yeah.
And then I started training with very well-respected body language and detecting deception experts. And then I combined that formal training with my master's in psychology, and voila, this is where I am today.
Here you are. And you have provided insights on body language from high profile court cases
Mhm.
all the way to high profile TV shows, everything from a court case to dating. You have given
Yes,
advice on. That's a pretty
absolutely.
amazing range of topics that you can cover. But in my book, I actually started to talk about how important body language is in our world of communication. And I use some examples about court cases and how it leads to credibility and or trust.
Mhm.
I know that around 2012, you participated in Senator John Edwards' trial, and you were there for that. And reporters started to ask you for your take on his body language.
That's
Can
correct.
you share a little bit about that experience? That's pretty amazing and almost maybe surreal at the time that here you are describing body language. So could you share a little bit of those insights from back then?
Yeah, so I was an observer of the case and I had missed a lot of the case. I
Okay.
ended up attending during closing arguments and jury deliberation.
Okay.
And just to refresh everyone's memory, the jury deliberation went on for like 9 days. So every day that reporters were waiting for a verdict didn't come, they wanted something to talk about. So that saying, being at the right place at the right time,
Yeah.
really held true for me. So when reporters found out that I was a body language expert, they did want my take. And that was my first media appearance, was with a Fox affiliate. The second media appearance is when one of the reporters who I did the first interview with, she said, a lot of people know that you're a body language expert now. And I'm like, She goes, I think others want to get in on an interview. Is that okay? I said, sure. So we walked down the courthouse steps, and that was a paparazzi moment with cameras and microphones and reporters wanting my take on whether John Edwards was confident or not.
Mm.
And there's very limited observation that I had, because it really was from the SUV that dropped him off in the morning in front of the courthouse and him walking from the SUV into the courthouse. And my opinion was is that he was confident.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy to have that paparazzi moment though?
It was, yes, it was absolutely surreal and crazy. And I don't know how I survived it. And I say that in jest,
Yeah.
because in those moments you just jump in and you do it and you don't
Yeah.
worry about the emotion. You get the job done. And then later on, it's like, wow, did that really just happen?
No doubt. But you've been asked your thoughts on other cases too, even as recent as the Derek Chauvin trial.
Yes. Mhm. And with the
Which,
Derek Chauvin trial, I'm just talking about courtroom body language and the
yeah,
types of body language that you might see from witness testimony.
yeah. And have you noticed, so if you go back from 2012 to all the way here in 2021, has the public's demand for understanding body language grown in those last 9, 10 years?
It has. People want to know. People want to engage. They want to have real relationships with other people.
That's
They
right.
want to know if someone really loves them, cares about them, respects them, and is not turning their back on them or backstabbing them or betraying them. That is one of the most popular questions I get, and people really want to know. And who
Yeah.
can blame them? I would want to know the same thing. And I imagine you would too. You want to
Yeah.
surround yourself with good people, the right people in your life. But how do you do that?
When I started to look up body language quotes for my book, I knew that this section of the book was going to be very popular because we know we communicate with our words, we communicate with our speeches, we even communicate with our actions. But when I coach somebody in business, they talk to me about the eye rolls. They talk about people looking at the clock, checking their
Mhm.
watches. So there's all these little subtle hints that happen and people are aware of it. But I decided to focus on it as a way to move people. I feel that every gesture we make either moves people away from us or moves people closer to us. And so it
Absolutely.
was an interesting search on my part. I went to Google, as we all do, and I looked up body language quotes. And there was a lot, there were a lot of them out there. I kept coming back to you. And
Oh,
I have to say, I am a huge fan of your work. I
thank you very
I
much.
love what you do for many reasons, but you are so genuine and so
Mhm.
sincere. I know that you are sharing all the knowledge that you have because you actually care about people. And I can tell that. And so I kept coming back because I got to share the quote that I used. But I kept coming back to this one quote. So I would write a bunch of them down, and there's some really good ones out there. And I
Mhm.
kept coming back down to this. And I'm going to quote you right now. reading body language is a bit like having a superpower. I couldn't get that out of my head because growing up, I always wanted to be a superhero. And I realized I can't fly. I'm not as strong as I want to be, all those things. And I thought, I'm seeing body language just like you are. It does give you a little bit of a superpower. Can you just share a little bit more about that, having that superpower? Because that's fascinating to me.
It makes you very relatable. It gives you an unfair advantage because a lot of times people focus on what somebody says, those words, which are very important,
Yeah.
but it's also the manner in which information is conveyed, the manner in which it is shared. So, for example, if you're working with a client and they have some silent objections, and you can tell in their body language that they're hedging, that they're not sure, that perhaps they're moving in the opposite direction that you would like, but you identify the subtleties in their body language and you can flip that script and you can identify those silent messages and address
Right.
them, then what happens with the client? They feel understood, they feel acknowledged, and then that helps breed what? Trust. You
There you
get
go.
them.
We live in a world right now that trust is a very hard thing to come by. We're not always privy to the truth
Mhm.
or the version of it that we are looking for.
Right.
And what I'm thinking is body language is extremely truthful. It's hard to hide from that. Now, I love having that superpower, but you also went on, and I quote you in the book, is that you see the subtle nuances of human communication, all those little elements. But then you added something in there, and this is what really attracted me to your message, is that the goal is always to understand people better. And I love that. I I share that with business leaders all over the world because when I ask business leaders, what is your greatest asset? They always say people. And yet they're not doing any training on understanding ways that their people communicate, not at the level that you are. And so if they really truly care about their people, they have to understand them. And that nonverbal communication is absolutely huge. So thank you so much for that, for letting me use your quote in the book. It absolutely made my book greater.
Oh, thank you.
Now, you got to share with us a little bit about the dating side of things. I saw you on the Steve Harvey show. You were awesome, by the way. Absolutely awesome. Watching Steve Harvey's body language as you're going through your role was awesome because you created a whole environment. You made the whole audience aware of body language. But how important is it in that dating realm? I mean, you were called in to do it, and the impact of understanding that body language, even if something is so intimate to all of us as dating, is critical. But how do you feel about teaching people body language as it relates to dating or intimacy?
It is so important, super important, because that's how you get a sense of someone's being genuine. Anyone can say anything at any time, but
That's
does
right.
their body language, do their facial expressions, do their movements support that verbal message? It's that congruency that you're looking for. If they say they're in love with you, does their body language show that they're in love with you? I mean, that's important. If they
Yeah,
say that they're really attracted to you, does their body language show it? So someone can say that they're attracted, but yet they turn away from you or they hold your hand, but it isn't a caress. It's more like a chore, meaning that their hand is hard or stiff in yours. It
sure.
isn't caressing. The fingers aren't soft. So you can get so much nonverbal information that can either support or bash what someone is saying. And that's so important.
I think, are you finding that most people don't pay enough attention to the body language? Like it's happening right around them, but maybe they're just focused on the words or the speeches, but they're not focused on interpreting or spending enough time really understanding what that person is saying with their nonverbal cues.
People misread body language is what I'm finding. They
Mm,
know that it is important, but they make automatic assumptions about body language. For example, crossed arms automatically means that someone is defensive, closed off, disengaged, mad. No, that isn't it. And what I tell people is there is an art and science to understanding, interpreting, and reading
yeah,
body language. It isn't like math, where 1 + 2 = 3, no matter where you are in the world, no matter what language you speak, 1 + 2 always equals 3. Body language is not that way. You have clusters. Clusters means more than 2 or more body language gestures occurring at the same time or
Yeah.
roughly around the same time, and then how culture and context impacts your understanding of body language.
I'm glad that you said that closed arms, crossed arms don't always mean something bad, because living here in Minnesota, when it's 20 below, you do crush. It just means I'm cold.
Right.
So
What is it doing? It's bringing more body heat when you're
that's
crossing
right.
your arms.
That's absolutely right. One of the things that I pick up on you through your body language and also through your words, you are passionate about what you do. There's no doubt about it. But what do you love most? I mean, you're helping people to have a greater life. There's no doubt about it. You're helping them to understand these nonverbal cues, which really reveal clues. That's what my chapter is called that you're in. Nonverbal cues reveal clues. You're helping them achieve greatness by understanding body language. But what do you love most? What gets you fired up the most about what you do?
Helping people have the best relationships. We cannot go through life without a relationship. Relationship doesn't always mean a personal romantic
Right.
relationship. It's with your family, it's with your children, it's with your friends, it's with your boss, it's with your colleagues, it's with people at the store. You just cannot go through life without people. Life
Yeah.
is about people, life is about relationships. But again, it is finding the right people. And I'm so passionate about it because I have come across so many wrong people in my life. So even when my abuse started, I was just 3 years old. I was
Wow.
tiny. And the stuff that I went through as a child and as an adolescent, how it's impacted me as an adult and as a mom. And I was sure anything in my power, my children were not going to go through anything even close to what I went through.
Right.
And I'm happy to say that they haven't. So that makes me very happy, and it gives me some peace, as you might imagine, as a mom. But it's also, I take that one step further, it's just for people in general. We
Yeah.
have to surround ourselves with good people. There are too many stories of heartbreaks and financial scams out there.
Oh my gosh, there's no doubt
How do
about
we
it.
limit that?
This last 13 months has been challenging for so many people.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I agree with you. I think relationships in the world of people is so critical to all of us. And
Mhm.
here we are distanced. So it's made things even harder. I just love that you took a challenge that you've experienced, and I'm sorry you experienced that, but you took this challenge and turned it into something that we can all benefit from, which is phenomenal. We all have our challenges, but not everybody turns it into something that benefits so many, and you have done that. As a body language, I'm a leadership coach, and among many things that I do, leadership is one of them. So when I go into a business, people talk leadership a little bit more. I just have to know, as a body language expert, when you come into a room, are people sitting up straight? As soon as they know a body language expert is there, do you find that they're trying to watch what they do a little bit more?
Initially, yes. When people first meet me and they realize what I do, they go into what I call body lockdown. This arms crossed, they shrink, they're covering, they want to hide their face because they're nervous of what messages are sending off. People love to think that I'm a mind reader, which I'm not. I'm just a body reader. So your emotions dictate how you're going to interact. It dictates your body language. So essentially, you're giving me a
I,
roadmap to you. But it's like with everything else. Like, so with my kids, it doesn't even matter what's body language to them. Body language expert, what does that even mean
right,
anymore? So
right.
it's like with anything else, you get used to it. So people who know me, that's not the first thing that comes to their mind anymore. They just see me. They just see Blanca.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, you're so genuine, so authentic that I'm sure that you get people to lower those guards immediately and just start taking in the information. This is
Mhm.
powerful on the home front, on the workplace, in our communities. We just need to spend more time. You know what? You really need your own show.
That's my nirvana. I'm so
I
happy you
know.
mentioned that. That is my nirvana. I would love to co-host either a TV talk show or an online show. And I say co-host because I love to play with people.
Yeah.
I'm really good at playing off of somebody.
Well,
Like
I'll
a
tell you.
comedian, I would fall flat. Like I don't have a funny bone in my body, but I can play off of people and I do that really well. So co-hosting would be a lot of fun.
Well, you know what? One of my side goals has been to be on a show, maybe co-host, maybe have a show. You never know where our paths may cross again.
Oh, that's true.
I think we could play well off of each other. When people find out that you are a body language expert, do they ever ask for personal tips? I know you do it on a kind of an international, a big scale, which from everything from trials to TV shows. But what's the most common thing that people might ask you as far as, how can I improve my body language? Or what tips do you have for somebody personally from a body language standpoint?
That's a great question. And one question that I get asked a lot is how can I appear more confident?
Uh, hmm
People get nervous. And
Yeah.
I love that question because it really shows who we are as people, that we have emotions, that we have insecurities, that we have doubts, but it's a way of how to overcome them. And I really like that question.
Yeah,
And
I think
then
everybody
that's how I
wants,
help.
yeah, and I think everybody wants to boost their confidence a little bit. When
Mhm.
I started studying body language, there were so many topics within that field that I talk about in the book, everything from steepling your hands
Mhm.
or tapping them, getting your fingers in it. So many things send a message. And I agree. I think so many people are unaware of the message they're sending, and then they can end up shifting. Are there some, are there some things, let's say you're in the workplace,
Mhm.
and I'm sure you're asked questions about body language in the workplace, which nowadays you got to be very careful of it. But
Right.
what are
So true.
what's some advice for business leaders? I know we have a huge following of business leaders all over the world.
Mm.
What are some things business leaders might be able to do better from a body language standpoint to not only be more confident as a leader, but just convey a better message? And I know that's a overarching question, but are there some things that people could be aware of right now in the workplace about their own body language?
Yes, all leaders need to realize this before I talk about the body language. You're setting the stage for the people you work with. You're setting that atmosphere and that environment for your colleagues.
Hmm.
What that means is if you, as a leader, you come in arrogant and you know better, and it's your way or no way, you have to think about the impact those messages, silent messages, and your body language is
Wow.
conveying to the people you work with, the people who look up to you. But as a leader, if you come in confidently and yet friendly and open and understanding, that changes the dynamic
Oh,
completely.
yeah. I talk a lot about setting the example or leading by
Mhm.
example. I was taught that in the Marine Corps. It was one of the principles of the Marines, set the
Mm.
example all the time. I'm going to guess most leaders don't think about leading by example and body language is going together. But the moment they walk in, people are observing them and
Absolutely.
they are setting the stage. If a leader does an eye roll, that's 10 times worse than if a team member does it,
Absolutely.
but they do it.
Absolutely. They do it.
Yeah, you even touched down on something else that they say a lot, which is kind of that it's my way or the highway.
Mhm.
They're setting that example with their communication. You have got to be very powerful in the business setting. I can imagine that people learn so much from you. I mean, I know we're all virtual right now, but in addition to the TV shows, in addition to, the court cases, are you finding that more and more business leaders are seeking out body language insights now?
They are. And the reason it's happening is because everything that they have tried, they realize that it's not working.
Yeah.
It needs something else. So what I do is I complement whatever it is that they're using, or I pull down those blinders that they don't even realize. A
Yeah.
way of connecting, a way of engendering trust, of getting people motivated.
I, I think they need that now more than ever because we're going into this transition phase where people are already feeling uncertain, they're feeling scared, they're feeling anxious. And a lot of business leaders are bringing people back into the workplace, but they're not coaching them or training them on how to now communicate with each other or specifically. And I know none of this goes down because I ask it, are you doing any training on body language? They say no. And yet I'll ask them a question on a scale of 1 to 10, how impactful is body language? And they'll say it's a 10. And I said, all right, so what are you doing to train on it? Nothing. I mean,
Makes sense, doesn't it?
yeah, I'm like, okay, maybe we should fix that. So in my own way, I go in and I teach a lot on body language and I use you as an example. I share a lot of what you're teaching and I say, you need to watch this. You need to listen to this. You need to look at this quote here. Um, we need to focus on that more in business. Here we are with the pandemic supposedly ending here very soon, and this transition phase, and people are scared. And
I'm glad you mentioned scared, because what happens is leaders cannot expect for their team to come back together pre-pandemic. There's not this, there's a bridge, there's a transition, there is still fear. Just because life is starting to go back to a new normal, it doesn't remove the fear. There's still spikes in cases across the country,
yeah,
even with the vaccine.
that's
So
right.
people still need to be cautious, and people have different opinions about their comfort level
Oh my
around
gosh,
other people. So you
that's
can't,
correct.
as a leader, you just can't assume everyone's going to be at your level. Some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower in terms of their comfort in interacting. And
That's
it's
right.
finding that balance.
And I'm assuming that just as every single person communicates with our vocal communication differently, there's different styles of nonverbal communication that we have to understand too. You know, some people are going to be a
Absolutely.
lot more reserved, some people are a lot more animated, like
Mhm.
us, you know. But
That's right.
I really feel that businesses need to start implementing nonverbal communication training. It sends such a powerful message, but we're not focused on it. But we're going into this great new era, but everybody
Mhm.
feels differently about it. And everybody's interpreting things differently.
Absolutely. And it's going to be that way for a while. It's
I,
going to be a roller coaster.
I
It's got
agree.
ups and downs, peaks and valleys.
I agree with that 100%. You know, it's interesting too, because even during this has been a crazy year from many standpoints that have all added to insecurities, whether it was the pandemic, the restrictions from the pandemic, wearing a mask, civil unrest, or
Mhm.
an election year unlike anything we've ever seen. And you know what I noticed during this election more so than any is the amount of people commenting on body language
Mm.
during the debates. That I think people assumed politicians are probably maybe saying what they need to. I'm not saying any of them lied, but people have an assumption going into um, into these debates. But it was interesting how much dialogue was happening afterwards on what their body language was. You know, for you, you're watching these debates differently than most of us. You're already locked in on the body language, but how important was that this go around for you? Even the last debate, there was a lot of body language happening there. There was a lot of messages being sent.
Ever since I started in body language, it has been important for people to understand politicians. It's
Yeah,
one way for people to gather the truth, for voters to gather the truth.
yeah,
And I feel like it's my job to make sure what they're seeing, they're truly understanding, and they're accurately interpreting the nonverbal signs that they're seeing in candidates or in anyone for that matter.
you know, I read a crazy statistic, and it was when I was writing a sales book, and it said
Mhm.
the trust level of buyers for salespeople is about 3%. So most people don't trust salespeople. Now, I'm in sales for my own respect. I mean, we all are to a certain extent, but I thought, wow,
Sure.
that's so low. There was only one career that had a lower trust factor, and that was politicians. And I feel that whether it's a politician or somebody in sales, if we say something and we don't deliver, we've broken a promise.
Mhm.
And what you're saying is body language and trust, they go together, they connect.
Yes.
And we need to observe body language so much more when everybody's speaking. It is a way for us as leaders to gain more trust from our team members. And we can also figure out what our team members are really saying. I'm going to guess a lot of
Exactly.
leaders aren't paying enough attention to the body language happening right around them.
No. Many times, what I find with the leaders that I've worked with, they're very consumed on the messages that they
Yeah.
have to deliver, the changes that they want to see in their team,
Yeah,
the growth they want to see in revenue and in their companies.
sure.
And that seems to cloud body language.
Yeah.
It clouds the basics of how you're going to lift your team up, how you're going to support them, how they're going to view you as a leader. That's someone that they can turn to, not someone that needs to be feared.
Mm.
It's
And right
very
now,
impactful.
yeah. I mean, it's the need for understanding body language, I think, is at the highest point ever coming out of a worldwide pandemic. You know, everybody's been impacted differently from this. You know, here we are on a virtual platform, um,
Mhm.
you know, and we don't know everything coming up. So that trust factor is huge. Now, I know for you, a very important trait is being unstoppable.
Yeah.
And when I look back at the pandemic, so many things were stopped. I had presentations lined up for a year and a half, and everything was stopped, or I think the code word was postponed, right?
Right. Code
Everything's
word.
postponed. Yeah. And a lot of it's coming back, but family gatherings were stopped. Going to the gym was stopped. Going to the store there was so much stopped that when I saw that your favorite trait, or one of them, is unstoppable, it lit me up. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means to you to be unstoppable?
I'm happy to. And this takes me back to my childhood. Growing up in the environment that I did, with the types of experiences that I went through, I could have stopped at any moment. And I will tell you and be quite transparent. There were many times I wanted to throw in the towel.
Hmm.
How can I continue? How can I find hope? What's even the point anymore? But there was something in me that I cannot explain that kept wanting to push forward. Even if I didn't know what path I was going in, couldn't predict the future. But
Yeah,
I know that I had to, it was so crummy and terrible where I was. I knew I had to get away from it. And one way to get away from it was to move forward. And then when I became a mother, that changed everything for
oh
me.
sure.
Everything. And then I knew, okay, my life isn't about me anymore. It was about my firstborn, and then my secondborn, then it became my children. And then how can I make sure that their life is different? I have to be unstoppable. Why? Stuff happens in life. Shit
That's right.
happens.
It
You have to
absolutely
push
does.
forward. And talking about leaders who are setting the example for their team, I'm setting the example for my children on how to live life, how to embrace life, how to push past obstacles. Life isn't always sunshine and roses.
That's right. I think that is so important right now. I know that you are going to move people who are listening to this. So many people have felt stopped. So many people have felt like they need to toss in the towel right now. And unfortunately, some people have. Suicide rates
Yeah,
are up, depression rates. I mean,
so
for
true.
every action, there's a reaction. And, we socially distance. We did what we were told to do. But now the pendulum is swinging back, and more people need to be unstoppable. I love your message, and plus, I've been able to I've been able to watch you and listen to you, and I know where your passion is, and that's why I love your message so much. It's so genuine and so from the heart. It's so real that we can relate to it, and we can be like you. We can, what you're sharing is this ability to have this superpower, or to be unstoppable. And you're transparent. You're sharing the things that impacted you and caused you to look at things differently. And I've been my wife's caregiver 5 times through 4 battles of cancer that she had. She
Oh, I'm
passed away of
sorry.
cardiac arrest and came back. While
Oh
I
my
was doing
gosh.
CPR, I handed her off to the paramedics. They took
That's
over,
frightening.
and yeah, and the third hit with the defibrillator, they brought her back. And there's times where people just want to toss in the towel. There's times where it's just too much, and we need each other to be able to motivate and switch gears from stoppable to unstoppable. So I'm just glad that you shared that. And I also want to touch down. I know that everybody's got their favorite sayings or cliches,
Mm,
and this one I think really ties in with being unstoppable. But you've said you love this saying that you have more power than you know.
absolutely.
And I love that, because so many people right now have felt powerless.
Mhm.
And can you just talk a little bit about that power that we have? We have more of it than we're aware of, but what exactly are you meaning when you say that?
There are times that, as much as we want other people's support, it isn't there for whatever reason. And you have to rely on yourself.
Mm,
And when you can push forward by yourself, or with all the odds against you, or you feel that all the odds are against you, by yourself, you're picking yourself up and moving forward. That's power. You rely on yourself in ways you didn't even know. You have strength you didn't know, resilience you didn't know, ideas that you come up with that you had never even thought about until you're in that crux and that critical mass of implosion. And that's what I mean about being powerful, that you have more power than you know. I mean, again, that is so much of my story. I went
don't
through,
give up. Just don't give up.
no, you cannot give up. You cannot. We have been blessed with life.
Yeah.
And we have been blessed with, however old you are, how many years you exist, That's how
That's
much
great.
life you've had lived so far. You have an undetermined amount left. And if you've been blessed with life, you owe it to yourself. And if you're a parent, you owe it to your children to be your best version and your most powerful version, not only for you, but for them. Because with no guarantees in life, as a parent, you don't know how long you have here.
That's right. And you've got to leave that legacy behind. You've got to leave them with
Absolutely.
thoughts on how to conduct themselves, how to handle pressures and stresses and challenges and obstacles when we're not there. You know,
Absolutely.
I have a very important concept. In fact, it's going to become one of my next books, called Activate the Power of Who, that most of us know what we do. Most of us know how to do it. We even know why we do it. We even know our greater purpose. But there's a concept that I really believe in it. And every time you activate it, your volume goes up, and I love it. And I call it Activate the Power of Who, because we are capable of unbelievable things. We are capable of being unstoppable when we attach our who, the people that mean the most to us. And I know that for you, that's your family. You know, when you talk about your who, I can feel that unstoppableness. In fact, you're like an unstoppable train. I wouldn't want to be in front of you because I can't stop you. But how important is the who to you? What does that do for you when you think about, when you let the people who mean the most to you into your mind? What does that do for your mindset?
It's everything.
Yeah,
My children are my life. My children are everything to me. I move forward, I think of my kids. I make decisions, I think of my kids.
that's
Does
awesome.
that mean I'm perfect? No. Does that mean I make mistakes? Of course it does. Have I made some bad decisions? Absolutely. But I'm talking about overall, my children are my drive. They did not ask to be born. I brought them into this world. I have an obligation and responsibility to my children.
Wow.
That's how I feel.
I can tell you're unstoppable. Nobody should try and stop you. So what is, I know you want to have your own show.
Yeah.
What are some other goals that you're working on, you know, for your business? You've created a very successful business from a very fragile start. You know, you had some
Yes.
personal challenges happen, but what's in the next months, years ahead for Blanca Cobb?
It's online programs.
Mm,
One thing that I've learned about people and myself, it's about convenience. If someone wants to learn something at 3 o'clock in the morning because they can't sleep, I want to be able to provide that for them.
there you go.
Something that provides value, something that's going to change lives. My premise is to change somebody's life. And I believe I do that with body language. I do that with detecting deception, how people can bring those right people in their life. How can
Yeah.
they communicate better and figure out if someone's lying to them or not.
Well,
So online courses,
this is a perfect time for online programs.
isn't it? It
Yeah.
absolutely is. And then I
And you're
want to,
on, oh, I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, I'd want to expand my reach when it comes with consulting,
Yeah. You know,
working with people.
it's interesting that, you know, we were all forced to go remote so
Mhm.
quickly, virtual, if you will. I mean, some of us were already experimenting with it, but then the pandemic hit and it was 0 to 100 overnight. But it has been good in some areas. You know, we've been able to sharpen our blade, if you will, improve our offerings or our message, and be more international, which has been great. I've
Mhm.
developed quite a few clients in Canada just as a result of the pandemic, because I was going to go out there, but now I can't yet, but we can still get to them virtually. Are your programs coming up? Is it all based on body language, or are you going to go beyond body language? What do we have in store for us
Great
from your
question.
online programs?
Yes, one is body language. Another one is about lying. Another one is body language for badass women.
Okay.
Right. I think that's very important because as women, we still want to make a place for a table and for ourselves and for others. And then also, I have a program, How Not to Suck on TV or Video. A
Well,
lot of people either want to be on television, but
yeah,
they know, as we've been talking about this whole time, virtual is the way to go. So they're
yeah,
creating videos to promote
sure.
themselves, their products, their companies, but then they flake out. There are too many train wrecks out there. And because I've been in the business for pushing 9 years now, I've been on television and so many different shows. I've been blessed to be on so many different national shows, regional and local shows. I've worked with so many people in the know. I know what they're looking for, what makes good entertainment, what makes a
Yeah.
good guest. but then also how to be engaging, how to be charismatic, how to come across confidently. And that's where I take people. So many people are worried about looking awkward, sounding silly, sounding dumb. They don't like how they look on camera. But if you jump on camera feeling this way, it's going to mess with your message.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, talk about those little nuances that you need, because you've got such a limited workspace here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have that powerful impact with less real estate than if you're on a live stage.
Absolutely.
But you're doing that right now. You're helping people right now on the kind of the TV side of things, or being in front of a camera. That's something you're doing now?
Yes.
Awesome.
I do yes, I do. I help people now.
And as far as the other online programs on body language, and I know a lot of badass women, they're going to love your programs. What are your timeframes on that? When can we expect to see those?
That is a great question. Over the next few months.
Wow, that's awesome.
Definitely by the end of the summer.
Oh, that's great. Well, we'll continue to let everybody know about that. Well, we have a lot of people listening that I think want to become unstoppable. I know that listening to you, they want to improve their body language and send a better message. They want to be unstoppable. They want to achieve greatness in their life. And there's a lot of ways to get there. If you had some key points for somebody just starting out on a pathway to become greater, and maybe they have some obstacles in their life similar to the ones you faced, or maybe different, or maybe just the pandemic, do you have any pointers for people that just want to get moving in that right direction?
You have to continue walking. You have to continue fighting. So many people wait for someone to help them. And as much as that is great, you cannot count on it. You have to depend on yourself. You move forward. So what that means is all that negative head talk, you have to push it aside. You have to forget it. You have to prove to yourself what you're made of. You have to prove to yourself you have what it takes to succeed. You have what it takes to overcome all the negativity, all the bad things that have happened in your life. But this is where you have to rely on yourself. And this takes a lot of self-talk. You have to be your own cheerleader. You have to pump yourself up. You have to look at the situation and then leave it for a little while, come back with some fresh eyes.
I mean, I was going to say, we have to hear your voice saying you have more power than you know.
Absolutely. Well said. Absolutely.
I don't think it's ever a bad idea to hear Blanca's voice in our head. I think that's powerful. And, to be able to tap into that power and keep taking those steps to move forward is probably more important now than ever. As we come out of the pandemic, as we go into this transition phase, I think we're all going to be faced with challenges we didn't expect.
Oh, yes.
We need to tap into that power.
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to really become unstoppable. I love that. I think I may have just figured out the title for this show, Blanca. It's going to be something about unstoppable, because you motivated me. I've told so many of our guests, the reason I love hosting the podcast is we have so many amazing people like you sharing so many great ideas that at the end of the episode, I'm so fired up. I want to go conquer the world.
There you go.
You did that to me today. So I appreciate that. I know. Isn't that a great feeling? It's got to be one of the greatest feelings when somebody reaches out that you didn't expect to say, you impacted my life. And I know that you get comments like that. We get it. And that's how we gauge success. Did we get an unsolicited comment that we impacted their life? And you must hear it from so many different sources on so many different topics about impacting.
I do.
So great. So great. Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much. One, for allowing me to quote you in my book. I am a huge fan. I think you are doing unbelievable things in our world, and we need Blanca Cobb now more than ever. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on our show. Truly an honor. I have looked forward to this for a long time, and I appreciate all the insights you shared today.
It was my pleasure. It was an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.